Huh? Oh, yeah. All right, give me 1 second and let me finish setting up. So sorry. It's weird. Why can't I, All right, I'm facing a problem. Hold on 1 second. Hey, Google, connect to Bluetooth.
This device is already connected to Karen's iPhone. You can ask me to disconnect it.
Huh. All right, I'm having trouble with something. All right, hold on. Awesome, I have 2 people. Shit, there's got to be a way to... Let me call you instead. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Cool, let me do that. All right. Hey, Google. Call 209-988-6034.
Call 209-988-6034.
All right. Hey, can you guys hear me? Sound good? Hey.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's going on?
Not too much. Trying to make sure I got everything set up all right.
Both you and me both, sister.
I was gonna say, right now I got you on speakerphone.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check with somebody right now and see if I can borrow some headphones.
Okay, sounds good. You are also on speakerphone, but I need you to be for audio reasons, so.
Say that again?
Oh, no, I said you're also on speakerphone, but I sort of need you to be for reasons.
Yeah, no, I got you on that.
All right. Sweet. Confederate
One
flag.
of these days I'll have you download OBS and try it out and see if you can capture some desktop audio that way. And we could probably get a little bit better setup going.
That would be awesome. All right, so
anyway,
flags.
Let me see if I can do this real quick.
Gotcha. We're going to be talking flags, Confederate flags, in particular, vexillology. Okay.
All right, I guess I'm just gonna have to go tire arm time.
I'm about it.
Let's see.
So.
I mean, does it make a difference if I put you on speakerphone?
Not really, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that I'm not making it worse or anything.
No, you're good. All right. So let's start with this, right? Well, so what is the argument you're making as far as references to the Confederate flag? It started with this picture on Facebook, right?
Right, yes.
The one, so there was a picture on Facebook and it was a pickup truck and it had 3 flags on it. It had a Confederate flag, the gay GLTBQIA pride flag, and the United States flag. And you said you would fly them, and I said it didn't make any sense. And the reason why I said it didn't make any sense is because those things can't symbolically stand together, right?
Right. So I was saying for the individual's meaning for flying those may be different than the intrinsic meaning that they have.
No, I absolutely am on board with that, right? So their meanings might differ. However, where we disagree is I don't believe the subjective perception of things like flags or symbols is relevant in the conversation and how we treat them.
Right, and I would say that that the individual perception is imperative because the collective perception is dictated by the collective individual perception.
Well, it's not, right? So you're talking about 2 different things that don't necessarily run parallel, right? You're talking about subjective perception versus collective perception. The subjective perception dies as collective perception, births, right? It comes alive.
I don't think that's the case.
Well, but by definition, collective perception isn't on
No,
an individual level.
I think
By its
they're
very
independent
concept.
of one another.
Huh?
I think that they're independent of one another.
How so?
Well, I mean, because
I guess how would you explain
perception-
an individual subjective collective perception?
So an individual's perception can be different than the collective perception, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So what I'm saying is, if you take some kid who was raised out in the middle of nowhere in the jungle, right?
Right.
And you show him a flag, and he's never had any experience with what the flag is supposed to represent from a collective standpoint.
Absolutely.
That kid's going to have his own perception of it.
Yeah.
He's going to have an individual perception of it.
Absolutely. And I'm not at all arguing that. What makes his perception what the flag is? And how is that any bearing on how we view flags and rate their benevolence versus their malevolence, right?
So restate that point. I missed what you were saying there.
So basically, I definitely understand if you took this kid out and you showed him a Confederate flag, you showed him any flag, he could very well come up with his own, perception of what that flag may mean. However, what is the method in which we use to determine if what he thinks it means is actually what it means? Is a flag solely whatever subjective perceptions are made on it?
So, okay, what I'm saying is, if you put 10 people in a room, right, and you all show them a flag, right,
Yes.
you're going to have 10 individual perceptions of what that flag is.
Possibly.
And then
you may not also. You may have a unified understanding of what those flags may be. Of what the perception. Oh, so you may, but you may also have a unified, perception too.
No, I'm saying you have both. I'm saying regardless of circumstance, you always have an individual and a collective.
Yes. However,
So, okay.
right. No, I agree with you.
So moving forward, the sum of the individual perceptions is what determines the collective.
No. I think that's where we sort of disagree.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's my argument right there.
So wait, so one more time, what is your argument?
The sum of the individual perceptions is what determines the collective.
The collective what? Perception?
The collective perception.
No, I would disagree with that. So for example, we get collective perceptions from collectives, right? We don't get them from individuals. We get individual perceptions from individuals. A collected individual perception is a collective perception. If you collect a bunch of individual things, that thing becomes a body.
Right, but what I'm saying is that the individual can still change the collective, right? So you may now have a new thing, right?
Yes.
You may have a collective perception, but because it's dependent on the individual perception, if you radically change all the individual perceptions, you change the collective.
Yes, but because you no longer changed an individual perception, you changed a collective perception. Again, you collect a bunch of individual perceptions, you have a collective of perceptions.
So again?
No, I said again, you collect a bunch of individual perceptions that are unified, that out of that is born a collective perception. Right. So it's speaking in just terms of the Confederacy, right? It's fair to say that people in the Confederacy ate apple pie. That they cooked really good food and that people know how to make pie and all that stuff. So a lot of people ate pie, right? So a perception for someone to look at the Confederate flag could be, wow, the Confederate flag is about apple pie, right? Because that's fair to say. A lot of people in the Confederacy probably ate apple pie.
It could be about the values of which the people that lived under that flag went through on a day-to-day basis or whatever.
It could be. Now, what mechanism do we have to...
It was customary for everybody in the Confederacy to have apple pie once a week.
Yes.
There might be some person that lived during the Confederacy that would say, yeah, look, part of what that flag stands for is apple pie.
Now, what mechanisms can we put in place to determine whether or not that's what it actually is? There's what it's perceived, but there's also what it is, right? I hope my voice cracked. Jesus Christ.
I mean, but to me, that's mixing. I mean, and that's where you get tricky, is you're mixing subjective and subjectivity and objectivity.
I'm not, because I think still the collective perception of a flag is still more or less subjective. Because again, another collection can look at the flag and think of something different. However,
Well, see,
all of those exist independent as to what the flag is.
See, the problem with the collective opinion is it's the sum total of the shared experiences of the individual subjective opinion. So it's kind of like schizophrenia, right? So if you talk to a schizophrenic person,
okay,
right, and they think that there's spiders crawling on their skin,
right,
you can't tell them that there aren't spiders crawling on their skin, right?
Right.
Like, it's not like, that's not their reality.
Right.
Like, in their reality, spiders are crawling on their skin. It's very real to them, and that's their subjective experience.
Right. But do you then treat him as if there are actually, in reality, spiders on his skin? I.e., would you start slapping the hell out of him, spraying him with DEET? Would you treat him as if there were actually spiders on him? I.e., what is the difference between what is perceived and what is actively happening?
You do have to accept that there's value in that person's statement.
Absolutely.
Right? While it might not be true to the collective, right? If you have 5 or 6 people in a room with that person,
right?
Yeah, they're not going to be like, "Yo, that guy has spiders on his skin,"
right?
But I mean, to treat the person in a way in which that their subjectivity is like has like foundational ground for their experience. I mean, I would say that's a fair argument.
And that's okay, but I would tell you that's not how we do flags. That's not how vexillology works. And what I mean by how we do it is that that way of viewing flags or perceiving flags has not proven itself to be prudent or evolutionary, because flags serve a specific sociological purpose, right?
Okay, what I'm saying is if a person is flying a Confederate flag,
yes,
right? And another person automatically assumes that person is racist and starts disrespecting them, right?
Well,
I would argue that is a bad thing.
Well, so now that's a totally separate argument, right? That is almost unconnected to what we're talking about.
Okay, so
the perception of people carrying flags is also independent on, again, what the flag actually is and what it actually represents.
See, I would say it's okay. There was one of the Facebook comments that somebody wrote, and it's like, why does it matter what piece of sky cloth you fly? It only like has a meaning to the person flying it, right?
Right. I am so happy about that. Actually,
I didn't agree with that person's statement completely, right? Like, obviously, other people are going to have interpretations of what the flag is being flown for.
Right.
And yes, those are going to be based off of the collective, right?
Right.
What I'm saying is, this is more better to look at when new symbols come about, right? When new symbols come about, it's based on the individual perceptions of the symbol. And then once the symbol is created, it can redefine itself to the individuals it's presented to based on past history. Or maybe not necessarily redefine, but reinforces the current value of it. Does that make any sense?
It does, but so one, I guess I've never personally seen that, but mostly because I don't know anyone personally who makes flags for themselves for purely subjective perspective reasons, right? Flags usually are a result of a collective mindset. That's how they usually come about, particularly flags like the Confederate flag, right? It represents an agency, an institution that's a government. It was born out of a collective mindset. It wasn't born out of an individual or subjective mindset. Some sentiments may have been the same, some sentiments were different, but only the ones that were collective were the ones that went into the value set that went into the flag. It wasn't the subjective ones. Those were not considered whatsoever when deciding what to put into the flag. It was only the collective opinions.
So here's what I understand.
Okay.
So you're saying that, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Roger.
So when the flag was made, it was made as a collective, not as an individual symbol. It was made as a collective. That's why it has intrinsic value.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that's why it has intrinsic value. Flags are made by collective groups all the time, and that may or may not have any value. This one in particular has value because of the thing it represents and its prominence in our human development, or in our social development.
What I'm saying is that even if a flag has intrinsic value, right?
Yes.
Even if it's made by a collective and it's made to be interpreted in a way, right?
Yes.
I mean, if we're talking specific examples, if you look at the KKK flag, I'm pretty sure that flag represents racism, right?
Well, does the KKK have a flag? Oh, okay, so yeah, if the KKK had a flag, I don't know if they have a flag, but if they do, it represents racism. Or
yeah, I'm 90%.
It doesn't necessarily represent racism, right? It represents a collective where one of the value sets is races, is based on race.
It would represent racial superiority, which then gets translated to racism.
Well, no, again, a flag represents a series of value sets, not one in particular, right? The Klan also had set up these little community centers for families, but
right.
That's
what I'm
not how
saying
we
is
recall.
any value system is going to have a value hierarchy.
What do you mean?
If you put any set of values together, you can't just be like, look, these are all equal. There's going to be some that outweigh the others.
Oh, yeah, sure, definitely.
So what I'm saying is, when I say something stands for X, right, I'm saying that's the primary value in the set of values.
Right.
So, but I'm not saying that it just stands for one. I'm just saying that's the primary focus whenever I interpret it.
Right. And so, but now when it comes to the Confederacy in particular, there's no evidence to suggest that things like peace, hope, or culture were the primary causes for creating the flag. Additionally, again, the other sort of almost side categories of cultural action for which a flag represents fall secondary, and they're not the metric we use when we try to judge things like benevolence versus malevolence, right? So the argument could be made that at some point, the North Korean government provided all of its people with clean water to drink, right? But that is peanuts in comparison to all the human rights violations they did. Now, while it's true they've given more water to people than they have killed people, that's not the metric by which we use to measure the benevolence or malevolence of a country, right? Or something like a country. We use a different metric, and that metric is their implication on humans, right? On the people who are in their jurisdiction. That's sort of the metric by which we judge those things. And so what the Confederacy did aside, regardless of how positive, falls secondary to the egregious things that they did, right?
Right, yeah, no, I definitely see what you're saying, man.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's like if you give somebody $20 and then stab them, it's like, which one's better?
Sure, you gave them $20, which, yay for you, but hey, you also stabbed them. That kind of thing. Right.
I thought that was a better analogy.
No, I agree with this. Yeah.
Okay, so now here's the thing, because we're trying to tackle this topic from two different angles.
Right.
I'm from like the bottom up, and you're starting from the top down, and it's kind of hard to find common ground. So we agree that flags have collective meaning, right?
Yes.
How is the collective meaning determined?
The collective meaning is used. Meaning can be determined in different ways. You mean about the meaning put behind the flag, right?
Yes, yeah. So
It mostly
if a
depends on the.
flag has three meanings, one is half of it, one of it's a quarter, and then the other one's a quarter, right?
Right.
How are those three meanings determined from the collective?
It more so depends on the flag and sort of why you're designing it. But if we're talking the context of the Confederacy, it was people, a few people who came up with an idea. That idea expanded. People adopted the claims and assertions, etc. They have adopted that culture, and then they formulated a symbol to represent the values of that culture.
Okay. Well, what I'm saying more broadly, right?
Yeah.
So when a flag is created, and there's the initial first group of people see that flag,
Yes.
how do they determine what the flag means? And how does that meaning change over time?
That depends again on the institution that's constructing the flag. Again, if we're talking about something like the Confederacy, they came together, they sat down, they came up with these set of values, they wrote a constitution, and then someone got inspired to create a flag that's based off of more or less the values written into that nation's documents. And then the nation adopted that as accepting it, this being a symbol of the entire value system. So a bunch of people were in contest to design a Confederate battle flag, and a person won and said, yes, that's the thing that would best symbolize the values that we've all decided to put inside of a flag. Wait, okay, it's all right.
It's there.
Yeah, I'm still here. I just got some comments that we're going to respond to. We're going to take some time to respond to some of these.
Oh, I got you.
Yep.
You're live on Facebook, right?
No, I'm on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of spreading the word. I'm like, okay, so this is my first publicized thing, so everything has to go right, and of course it fucking didn't. I was like, damn it. All right.
Drop me a link through Messenger if you can.
Okay. Will do. Drop you a link to my Messenger, to my YouTube.
Yeah, to YouTube from Facebook Messenger.
Gotcha. Yep. Doing it right now. Yeah. So I know exactly where we differ, right? Where the pushback exists is you believe that reasonable consideration should be given to subjective perceptions of a flag.
I would say at least in an individual context, right? So if one person's flying it and one person's observing it, and then those two people are going to have an interaction about what they've both observed.
Right. Okay. So I think we may be arguing two different things, almost entirely. So,
right. But what I'm saying is, in terms of collective opinions, right?
Yes.
If, let's say we're looking at some government building, and there's an American flag flying in front of it, yeah, the collective opinion is going to be superior in that case. You're just supposed to take it for granted that it is what it is.
Right.
But like I said, there's a different context that can be taken, and that's the individual experience, like when you're talking to somebody on the street, whatever.
Right.
Because in my opinion, that flag no longer represents the collective, it's representing the individual in that case. Okay,
I would disagree with that. Right, so we have a legal understanding of what personal property and space means. We even have a somewhat sociological understanding of what personal space means. However, that does not mean that something is necessarily intrinsically private, right? So the ways people use flags, they're used for a purpose. Right, they're used to project an emotion or to project a thought or a set of beliefs or values or what have you. They're used to project something. They're not sort of used for these sort of personal expressions of something. If I have an Ohio flag, it's something I share pride in. Ohio is a collective concept. The same goes for sports teams and things like that. But we know that the three flags behind that truck were illicitly tied to collective ideology, right? Nothing subjective. And they were flying them in a public space because the only reason you fly a flag in that in particular manner is to make a public statement.
Right, and so what I believe that individual statement was that his individual interpretation of what those flags meant was different than the collective.
Yes, and
I can't go further into speculation, but if I were, then I would say, and his opinion that his individual perspective was different than the collective meant that the collective should change.
Yes.
But that's further speculation.
Gotcha. And then my argument is that may whatever his subjective opinions on flying the flags are, if they're not in line with what they are in reality, then his perceptions are wrong. They are demonstrably incorrect.
But that's the thing, is perceptions can't be wrong. I mean, they can.
Well, I was like, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
But an individual's perception can never be wrong. It is what it is.
Ooh, hold on, wait. Okay, so wait, I need you to delve into this. So what do you mean an individual's perception can never be wrong?
So, an individual's perception is how they experience the world, right?
Yes.
You can't tell the schizophrenic person with spiders on their arm that they're wrong and that they need to stop acting like there's spiders on their arm.
No, but I think you're talking about wrong in the literal sense, where I'm talking about in the philosophical sense. Not that they're wrong for feeling it, but they are factually incorrect. There isn't spiders on them. That's not what that is. Like you may perceive there are spiders, but you are not literally wrong for perceiving that there are spiders, but there are in fact not spiders. That is
right. Yeah,
factually
we're in agreement on that.
Yeah, so that's all I'm saying.
All I'm saying is that the individual perspective should not be discounted.
Right, and I'm saying with something like a flag, it never had a place in there in the first place, and it never had subjective opinion doesn't have a holding in the way we use flags in vexillology.
But I disagree, right? So can stand for a collective set of values, right? But ultimately, the person's reason for flying the flag or observing the flag is still going to be filtered through the individual subjective lens.
But it would only need to be considered if the flag were drawn up subjectively, right? This wasn't a collective mindseted flag. This was a flag they drew in their garage and flew it. Then the only value sets that matters in perception of that flag is the person who subjectively designed it. But that's not the case for either of the three flags behind the truck. Those were collective constructs with intrinsic collective value, and the subjective perception of them, whatever it may be, is axiomatically incorrect unless it's what actually aligns to the collective values that assign them in the first place.
Okay, let's go back to the apple pie argument.
Okay.
So kind of a comical argument.
It is, right? I just picture Confederates like a lot of really good and sweet food because their food is kind of amazing. So I'm like, I went to apple pie.
So what I'm saying is, let's say that there's some guy named Joe. Joe is like, hey, Joe, your Confederate flag is cool.
Right.
And everybody's like, what do you mean, Joe? Joe, the Confederate flag means this, right?
Right.
And Joe's like, no, like, what I understand about the Confederate flag is that it means apple pie, right?
Right.
It means everybody should be able to have apple pie on Sundays, regardless of whatever.
Right.
And they're like, but Joe, like, that's not what it stands for.
Right.
So this could be right in the sense that, yeah, that's not the primary, value. That's not even a value in the set that the collective is known for, right?
Right.
But Joe's still going to see it as a symbol for apple pie, right?
Right.
So regardless, Joe's probably not going to change his mind. And Joe is probably still going to fly that flag because he likes apple pie.
Definitely.
And Joe should be called a racist or anything of the sort if he thinks it means apple pie.
So, but again, that last part was again an entirely separate argument. So right now I'm making no pronouncements whatsoever at who should fly the flag, where, if it should be flown or if it shouldn't. I am making no pronouncements to that. By all means, you can quadruple tape them to the back of your truck for all I care, for that matter. That's not the pronouncements I'm making. The pronouncements I'm making is you can fly them for whatever reason you may feel you think is right. By all means, do it. But unless it's the intrinsic meaning in the flag, your perception is incorrect. You are flying them for the wrong reasons. The flags you are flying together can't symbolically stand as a collective. They don't mesh. Two of them cancel the one out, and one was literally anti the other. So
okay, well, what I'm saying is, again, with the...
I get your perception, but the perception is wrong.
Okay.
Yes.
It might be wrong in the collective sense.
Yes.
It still can be right in any regard to the individual, right?
You're right, but flags are not subjective constructs.
Okay, but Joe is still flying because he likes apple pie, right?
Yes.
And if Sarah comes up and talks to Joe about, hey, Joe, don't you mean, like, what do you mean whenever you're flying this flag, right?
Yes.
Do you mean this set of values? And he goes, no, I mean apple pie, right?
Yes.
Like,
so really quick, so before we get to this new thing, because we're definitely about to get into a new thing. The old conversation, so we're clear, has ended about whether or not the person's subjective opinion on a flag is either wrong or right.
yeah.
Okay, now we're moving on to whether or not the person should be ridiculed or stigmatized for flying it.
Just what is the way in which people should tackle observing a collective symbol when an individual's interpretation may be different than the collective?
I am so glad you asked, sir. There's a field called Vexillology, which is actually what I've titled this video. Vexillology is a study or just general interest of flags, standards, and symbols, right? So the thing about that is, okay, sorry, one question. What did you ask me really quick, short version? Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
So, short version is, one person is flying a collective symbol
Yes.
for an individual interpretation that may be different than the collective.
Yes.
Another individual who observes the collective symbol
Yes.
observes it as the collective symbol regardless of the other individual's interpretation.
Yes.
That attempts to find common ground and talk about what it means to each person. How should people go about that?
Ultimately, that would have been on the person you were talking to. But I guess we're going to apply that as a general sort of field of epistemology. You don't. I don't know how to put this. Okay, let me try to put this better because this guy's calling it. Flags are not designed. Well, that's a lie. Flags like the Confederate flag and other flags like it that represent similar things aren't designed for any subjective purpose. Period.
Right, but I'm arguing that they are still used in that way.
Yes, and that's perfectly fine. However, that's not what it is. So you can have it for subjective purposes. You can turn a stool upside down and put a cup in it. It's not a table. That's not what it is.
Right, but you can pick up a rock and use it as a hammer, and now it's a hammer.
No, it's still a rock. You're just using it like you would use a hammer.
Right, I'm saying regardless, the object may be different, but the function can be the same.
Wait, what do you mean? Do you mean the opposite? Because in this case, the flag is a concept.
No. See, this is where we're different, right?
Okay.
I'm saying the objects can be different and the function can be the same.
Right.
Right, and I believe you're saying that the function may be different and the object may be the same. Is that it? Or do I have that backwards?
I actually don't know because we both agree that the meaning of a flag can change.
Can change, right?
Yeah. So we both agree that what it represents can change. We also both agree that the flag itself
it can change based on the narrative structure it's in.
Absolutely.
But there's several instances in which it can change.
Absolutely. But is that how we do flag value?
I don't know.
It isn't, right? So we don't look at flags based on their potential intrinsic meaning. We look at them based on their current intrinsic meaning or their face
I mean,
value.
maybe I'm different than most people, but like,
I highly doubt you view flags that way. I don't think you do.
okay, I'll put it this way.
Name me an
I
instance.
view flags the same way that I view people of different races, right?
And
They have a stereotype or a meaning attached to them, but that meaning is open to interpretation and change based on the evidence provided.
So a little different, right? Flags and pigmentation are a little different. I don't know. I guess what better? No. I guess I just don't understand. You repeat it one more time, so I make it simpler because I'm really tripping.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for perceptual schema, right? If
Yeah.
you're looking at the way in which people interpret the world, they will have a simplified collective view in which they interpret first. And then they will look at the correlations between the collective and the individual's perspective and attempt to draw their best conclusion.
I would disagree with that. I would err more on the side that something like a Confederate flag was constructed off of a series of both subjective and collective perceptions, and only the collective ones went into the final product. The subjective ones were discounted entirely. They basically,
Right.
they argue that basing a subjective perception has no place when it comes to how we evaluate the moral standard or the value standard of something like a flag that represents something like a nation.
Right, I guess, okay. So what's the argument that you're making? You're saying that we determine the value of the benevolence or the benevolence of a flag based on the collective interpretation, right?
The argument I'm making is that the flag is a symbol and has a meaning behind that symbol, and you have no control over what that is.
To the collective, right?
Yes, which is the only place a flag matters. A flag like this matters.
I mean, I would disagree. It obviously mattered to the individual perspective of the person flying the 3 different ones on the truck.
Yes, but only because now that he's having it, he's part of a collective narrative, right? Again, if he would have designed his own flag with a drawing of the South on it, that would have been significantly different than picking up a collective idea that already has intrinsic collective value and then trying to convince others that that's not what it is. That it's actually my subjective thing, and therefore this is now what it is, and it's not. That you're just perceiving it that way. If you see a mirage in the desert and you go to drink a bunch of sand, you'd be incorrect.
He's using an object perceived with one meaning, right? And he's using the same object to attempt to convey a different meaning.
Yes. Agreed.
Right. And in terms of the collective, right?
Yes.
It's going to be different. And it's not going to make sense if you view it from the collective opinion, because they're trying to get you to view it from an individualist perspective, and they're trying to get you to change the meaning of it.
But you can't view something like a national symbol from an individual perspective. Those two things don't even exist in the same sphere. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay.
That you can't have a subjective truth on an intrinsically collective thing.
Okay, let's work our way from the ground up in this argument.
Gotcha.
Right? I'm gonna take you through a little exercise, I guess.
Let's do it.
Okay, so you got 10 people in the room, right?
Mm-hmm.
These 10 people say, look, that flag, it's blue and black, right?
Yes.
Blue and black now represents pride and honor, and all of these 10 people in this room agree, right?
Right.
So now the flag represents that.
Right.
And then Joey, right, because he likes apple pie and he's weird, comes along and he's like, no, I want that flag to represent cowardice, right? And I mean, Joey's in the group of 10 people, and all the other 9 are like, Joey, you're crazy. So Joey's eating his apple pie one day, and Bob comes and sits down, and he's like, "Hey, Bob, I think that flag represents cowardice, right?" And he presents his case, right? And now he's changed one person's mind, so now there's 2 out of 10 people that are like, "Yeah, it probably represents cowardice, right?"
Right.
So now that continues to happen until 6 out of 10 people now think that it represents cowardice instead of its original meaning.
Right.
So now its meaning has changed, right? Because now there's a new way that the collective is viewing it in a majority setting.
Okay.
So that's how the individual can change the collective opinion, right?
Right. Now, but what I'm saying is, whatever thing he introduces or that person introduces to change the collective opinion, it is entirely out of his control on whether or not the collective accepts that, right? So he could say that it's about this thing. At that point, its ability to become a symbol for that thing he suggested is totally out of his control. Right. There were definitely people in the South who said, I do not want this flag to represent this country, and I don't want this country to represent racism. Or sorry, institutional slavery. However, that's not one of the things that was taken into consideration when constructing the thing. Regardless, and the person who belted that had no control on whether the collective accepted that as a value set or not. That's what I mean. The flag means something whether you really want it to or not, and you can't control that. You can suggest and maybe start change, but you don't have any control whether or not it actually changes or whether or not it does. And the truth is, while that person flew the flag in the back of their truck and attempting to project some sort of subjective opinion on what the flag is perceived to be to them, that's not what the flag is. And you don't have any power over, and you don't have the ability to control what it is.
Right, but he has the ability to start potential change.
Oh, absolutely. And if this is the way to do that, chill. However, he's not, and that's not what it currently is, and we don't value things like flags on their potential value. We value them at face value. So that's the thing,
is that it will never be. You can take this scenario and turn it into a different scenario, right?
No, sir.
Where a flag has X meaning, person 1 has Y interpretation, right?
Yes.
And Y interpretation should become the new meaning instead of X interpretation. You introduce a new person. If that new person is convinced that those 2 meanings are now swapped, and that starts a chain reaction down, that can change and will change the collective opinion.
Absolutely. And again, I totally agree with you. However, it hasn't, and he can't control that. Right?
He can control whether or not to fly them.
Oh, absolutely. But he cannot control their value. That is up to the collective.
Okay. Let's take another step back.
All right.
If he spotted the 3 of them in the back of his truck, and that consequently changes their meaning, right? The collective now decides, okay, now peace flags mean these things, right?
Right.
He caused that.
Wait, sorry, repeat that one more time. If he flies the flags on his truck and other people see and agree that he...
And that is the single variable that starts the chain reaction that changes their collective meaning. He caused that.
No.
Yes, because he chose whether or not to do that and to present them in a way that was different from their original context.
He was a catalyst that drove collective thought, right? So he is not the cause of why this is now a collective value, right? He's the catalyst that made it a collective value, but he is not the reason it's a collective value. The collective is the reason it's a collective value. It's been accepted by the group. The group says it's a value, therefore it's a group value. an individual didn't say this is an individual value and only my value will be put into this thing. And so, like, or all of our values separately will be put into a thing. It was accepted by the collective. So just like the person in the Confederacy who didn't want slavery, there was definitely a person in the Confederacy who absolutely wanted it. And that
what I'm arguing is that the potential for change is reason for action.
Right. But again, I'm not at all trying to debate you on whether or not his actions are correct or whatever. I'm the only thing I'm debating is that those three flags can't symbolically stand together. And two, those flags have meaning and he can't control what those meanings are. He has no power over what those are. Like, period. It's up to the collective to translate.
Right. If you see the collective intrinsic meaning clash, I would agree.
Which they do because we're talking about a flag and someone's subjective use of them.
Right. So what I'm saying is, if one stands for progressivism, one stands for racial superiority. Like, again, they don't coincide. Like,
right.
You can't reconcile those.
You can't. One was literally anti the other.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I'm not making an argument there.
Yeah. No.
And then what was your second part?
That those flags have meaning, and because they are collective symbols, his subjective perception of what they are wildly irrelevant to how we analyze flags.
So yeah, like I was saying, if person one flies a flag, he can't determine, or she can't determine, person two's interpretation.
No.
Right, I'm agreeing with you on that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not what I was saying at all in terms of like that being the reason that they're doing what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm saying, because you're like, it doesn't make any sense that a person is doing this, or at least that's how it came across to me when you made the post on Facebook.
Well, no, it doesn't make any sense they were doing it. Is that the comment, they didn't make any sense. So I made a comment that wouldn't make any sense. That comment was strictly referring to the literal symbols of those flags, right? The things those represent did not stand together.
Right. If you change their meaning and the three flags meaning ended up being 2 + 2 = 5, it doesn't make any sense.
Right. And that's sort of what I meant. Yeah.
Right, and that's not how I took it at all. Like, when I read, this doesn't make any sense, I was like, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
right? Like,
no.
An individual perception is different than the collective, and they're making an attempt to become a catalyst to change the collective meaning.
Right, exactly. And now, exactly, and that I wasn't making any sort of moral pronouncements at all on whether or not a person should fly them. That's not at all what I was saying.
I guess maybe one of my main things was I was used to arguments being addressed in that way.
Yeah.
And so maybe I added or attributed something that wasn't there.
That's fair. But if you want to move on to, well, I know you brought up a few things that day. So there was, so we got through that part. And then so now there's the conversation about whether or not you should fly them. But then we also talked about race a little bit, so I don't know which one of those you wanted to get into in particular.
I don't know. What do you want to dive into? I love talking about race because people hate talking about it.
All right, let's do that.
And I mean, I'm a straight white guy. You're a gay black guy. Let's dive into this. This is fun.
Okay. Well, actually, so because I promised these people on YouTube a show about vexillology, we can talk about race, but it has to somewhat tie into the flag, right?
Right. So let's talk about racism in terms of interpretation of the Confederate flag, and possibly in using that to compare it to the U.S.'s flag today.
Right. Okay. So let's do that. So what do you believe in reference to that and why?
Okay. So when someone decides to fly a Confederate flag, right? Mm-hmm. What would you say is the primary interpretation that an outside observer would see.
That's a Confederate flag.
Right. So Johnny or whatever is flying a Confederate flag, and Sally comes along. What does Sally think about the Confederate flag that Johnny's flying?
You would have to ask Sally, but honestly, you would have to ask Sally because there could be a range of perceptions.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying is that there is like that collective perception that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Extends out into the majority of scenarios that people come across.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. But those are wildly irrelevant in comparison to the collective.
All right, I'm trying to figure out a way to phrase an argument.
So all right. So, okay.
Because it still ties into how should people act when encountering these symbols.
Well, I mean, I agree. That's how it ties into. I actually would argue less about how people should act and more about what should be perceived and done of the symbols themselves.
Well, see, my only thing on that is if you try to take it outside of the context of these flags and this argument, it becomes harder to understand from a broad perspective.
True, but also the same one can be said about changing people's attitudes toward that.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying change people's attitudes, but I'm trying to understand how to navigate the broad context, right?
Right. So we I'll sort of get the ball rolling here. So we've acknowledged that flags, in particular this flag, the Confederate flag, represents as something, right? Well, intrinsic within that something was the institution of slavery.
Okay.
Huh? Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're bringing it. Okay. Yeah, it was within it the institution of slavery.
Okay, yes, I agree.
So, using the most prudent methodology we have for analyzing or measuring the benevolence versus the malevolence of something like a country, what of those attributes would be the metric on which we judge the goodness or badness of the Confederacy, and how heavily do they weigh, and why are they different?
Well, my argument for that would be if it's a set of values, right?
Right.
And I would say a set has to be at least 3 or more.
Right.
Taking it from the simplest standpoint, if you have 3 values, you would have to judge the sum of those 3 values, right? So if your first one is giving somebody $20, okay, that's a value.
Right.
Stabbing somebody is value 2, right?
Yes.
So now that is wildly negative.
Right.
And then you give somebody $30 more, and it's like, okay, stabbing somebody is not great, or is greater, like, negatively than the positive outcome of the $50.
Right. Now, would you call that guy a good person or a bad person?
No, it would be a bad person.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying.
Right.
It's the collective set would determine the measured outcome.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with that. So hold on one second. What was I? Because I was talking to this about someone earlier. Oh yeah. No, oh, sorry. Really quick. Jump back on the thing where you quoted the guy, because I said I was going to address this for him in particular. One, the flag is not just a piece of cloth. A lot of people actually care and stuff. Whole wars have been fought over a piece of cloth. So it might be your subjective opinion that no one cares about a flag and you might not in particular. But to say that nobody cares about flags is axiomatically wrong. It's just incorrect.
I got you.
Yeah, I wasn't.
As a baseline to go off of.
At that time, you'll see in the video, I wasn't talking to you. I was actually talking to you too, because I think he might have been watching. So I wasn't talking to you. I was just telling him that. Yeah. Do you think that is wrong? There is evidence to suggest that people care a great deal about flags. I forgot the second part of your question, but I'm just going to say it was probably unfounded too.
Okay, I know you haven't gone into merchandising yet, but a shirt that says "We love flags" would totally be okay.
Oh yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
like have a flag on it,
Definitely.
or hey, flags matter.
But oh my, okay. But anyways, yeah. So my thing is right because of the nature of the Confederacy, right, and then this sort of actions, we judge the benevolence or malevolence of the Confederacy based on the most egregious acts against humans. We've placed human rights violations at the top of our list of moral no-nos. And so that therefore any violations of that would weigh heavier than almost any other perceived benefit that something like the Confederacy may have done.
Well, I would say the egregious acts are judged, what do you call it, on the same level as the extremely benevolent, right? So.
I mean, sometimes, yeah. That part of that is sort of a media distribution, but for example, we know all of the wonderful things Adolf Hitler must have did for Germany and Germans, right? Did great things for them. Did terrible things for not Germany and Germans.
Okay, so here's a little side tidbit because now we're falling into something that I have grounds in.
Okay.
Psychologically speaking, right? One negative action has to have 5 positive actions to weigh out equally, right?
Okay.
So if you're cheated,
Wait. How did you determine that?
It has to do with the neurochemical responses.
Is it exactly 5 or is that?
I can attempt to cite, but you'd have to give me some time on it.
Okay, definitely. Yeah, shoot over when you get a chance. Wait, so is it exactly 5 every time?
No, it's
okay.
Okay. So if it's one negative thing, right? So you stab somebody, right? Mm-hmm. And you have X severity, right? Yeah. You're going to need 5 of the same severity. So if stabbing somebody is a 9 and actually killing somebody is a 10, right? Okay. And you stab somebody, okay, you committed a negative action of severity 9.
Right.
Now you have to do 5 positive things at the same severity of 9.
Okay. But is that 5 a fixed number or is that just being colloquially?
I think it's a broad context.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm not too sure.
Cool.
I browsed over the study, read through it a little bit, tried to understand what parts of the brain they were looking at neurochemically, and then went to study those parts of the brain and forgot to go back to the study.
Gotcha.
So, I'll definitely look into it. I mean, I have psych tomorrow. I can talk to my professor about it.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I just thought it was really cool that we happen to be talking about that and talking about the study.
You're right.
And that happened to be relevant to what we're talking about in terms of the flags, right?
Right,
so
that's always fun.
If we're judging positive and negative, right?
Right.
And we're trying to do that at least on the psychological consequences that it has on an individual from a collective standpoint.
Right.
Then that would be relevant.
Do you really quick? So sorry to interrupt. Do you really want to quickly? I have a lot of comments on YouTube. Do you want to address some of these? I'll read them to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have any on Twitch?
No, I actually have not been streaming this.
What? What is wrong with you?
Yeah, no. But what I will end up doing is I will take your video and I will run it like basically as a rerun.
That works
for everybody to see, and
that's
then that
perfect.
will be saved to my VOD.
Awesome.
So.
All right. Brutal Una says people changing the narrative of something has no bearing on the truth of something. I think we both conceded that for the most part.
Wait. Let's address that.
Okay.
So
people changing the narrative of something has no bearing on the truth of something.
Okay, I'm saying something that exists within a narrative with a certain meaning, the meaning may change if you put it inside a different narrative.
That's fair. So if we put this into the context of what we're talking about, the different narrative can mean the collective.
Right, so I'm saying if you take the big bad wolf out of Little Red Riding Hood and you stick him in King Arthur, and he gets killed by King Arthur. That's way different than if he eats Little Red Riding Hood.
Right.
And hopefully we all understand what that means when addressing the other situation.
Right. Brutal Lunas, I hope you heard that. Oh, good question. Same guy asked, why don't people who love the flag just come up with a new one that where they can place the values of things like Southern pride and things into that flag?
Agreed. So that's kind of the problem that I've seen with people with similar mindsets to mine about the Confederate flag, right? So a lot of people that I talk to and I have like-mindedness with, they see the Confederate flag as a symbol of civil divide between the South and the North, right? And the way in which they use the Confederate flag is to show that they are in disagreement with the current government. Not that they're trying to represent what the Confederate represented in terms of racial institutions.
Gotcha. And I would disagree. I guess I feel like any sort of pronouncements to the Confederacy will intrinsically, almost automatically, have the tie into institutional racism. Because considering slavery was written in as an institution by the Confederacy.
Right, I'm just saying the few people that I'm talking to, and this is no more than 6 people.
Nice.
That is their interpretation, and that is the means of which they attempt to perceive the flag.
Right. Attempt being the opposite word.
They don't make any arguments towards the collective understanding of it. Right. They wildly understand that everybody else's views on that flag may be charged racially for good reason, and that the meaning is completely different.
Right.
So now the reason that I brought that up is because any attempt to kind of redesign the flag has seemed to backfire in any ways that I've brought up.
Oh, really?
So
I didn't know there was attempts to redesign the flag. Yeah.
So how do you change the meaning when redesigning the flag, right? What happens if you keep the same color scheme but you change the symbol? What happens if you change the color scheme but you keep the same symbols, right?
Right. It's
a whole complex structure.
True. That's unknown what will happen if you try to change the symbol. It could either be received positively or received negatively. Regardless of how it's perceived, however it's perceived is totally out of one's control.
Should it just be a trial and error thing?
Oh no, definitely, it could totally be a trial and error thing. And by the way, I'm speaking to the YouTube folk. I am totally all about people who truly want to express things like Southern pride and the good, even arguably the good parts about the Confederacy. If you want to design a flag that is literally spelled out, those are just the parts you're trying that's just the values that you're trying to put in there. I am all about that. Like if you come up with a flag that say, okay, we all agree this flag means everything but slavery. That's what we're not okay with. And that's down and written down sort of, and it's backed up with the same sort of meat that the Confederate flag is. I have zero qualms with that.
You want to know what would be a really cool design for that I just thought of?
What's that? I'm excited.
So you take the existing Confederate flag, right? Now rip all the colors from it and keep it black and white. And then where all of the solid lines are, break them into dashes. Let the colors merge together.
So, a few things. Vexillology is fun, right? Because I actually have a book on it. I was just reading. It's really, really awesome. But turning flags black and white means something, and it's what you do when you're anti.
Okay, again, nothing I knew.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. A lot of people don't know. I was just a nerdy kid with no friends, and so I learned a lot about vexillology. I learned a
nerdy kid with no friends who learned stuff psychology. So.
Right. I was so dorky. I learned that the study of flags is called vexillology. That's how terrible that is.
I don't know anybody else that knows that.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of dumb stuff.
Yeah, right. So dumb. But yeah, inverting the colors of a flag, turning them black and white means anti. Believe it or not, there is a heterosexual flag. It exists. It is a straight flag.
What?
Yes.
I'm Googling this.
Yes, it
I'm
is.
Googling.
Proceed to Google it. It is black and white horizontal stripes all the way down. And it's that color, it's those colors because it's supposed to resemble the gay flag, but the color's been removed.
What?
Yeah.
I see it. I'm looking at it right now.
Yep. How do you feel?
I don't feel good.
Now, see, really quick, not to you, but to Ben. Ben, do you see flags elicit emotion sometimes in people? So to say that it means nothing to nobody is
as I was
just
describing the other one, I realized that it could be problematic.
Oh, right. It will make it look anti-Confederacy, like counter-Confederacy, or not Confederacy, I should say.
I mean, because immediately it makes your brain think, okay, what is this saying, right?
Yeah.
And if this is one thing and it's supposed to be positive, and this is the opposite of positive, then it's going to be negative.
Are you suddenly into vexillology now? Because not gonna lie, that's kind of how I got sucked.
Yeah, I totally want to nerd out about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's so bad. The colors in flags totally mean something. You see a lot of flags with horizontal stripes, and those three horizontal stripes mean they were either conquered by Italy or France, mostly France, and they sort of put their own African definitions of colors on them. In most westernized countries, red in a flag means blood, white in a flag means purity. In the British flag, lions sticking out their tongues is a symbol of power. So on most British things, period, you'll see lions sticking out their tongues. It's actually really, really interesting. It sounds less nerdy when you really get into it. I promise. I'm gonna shut up now because I get.
So here's the thing. I looked up heterosexual stripes, right? And there's a pretty cool sweatshirt design actually, and it merges the heterosexual flag with the LGBT flag. And it totally changes the context of how I perceived it, right?
Right.
So if you see the heterosexual flag by itself, it can be perceived as negative, right?
Right. Or I don't know. I actually wouldn't necessarily say that. I don't know if it should be perceived as negative.
What I'm saying is it could be perceived as negative. At least that's how I experienced it, right?
Absolutely.
So, but in conjunction, whenever it was added to the LGBT flag, it shifted my perception on, oh, it's probably negative, right?
Right.
So now we're adding two things together. We need to address it together.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm going to send you a picture of it.
Yep. If that's how the collective agrees with you in perceiving that image, absolutely. But again, you have no control over that.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that is cool. Actually, I like that. This is the sweatshirt.
I would totally wear that.
Heterosexuals, if you're feeling like you. By the way, if you, I'm talking to the audience again. If you guys are one of those people who do straight pride parades, please stop. Just stop. If you want a straight pride parade, it's the other 364 days a year. It's sports
parade.
Yeah, it's Sports Illustrated. It's the NFL cheerleaders. It's music videos. It's rap music. If you want to see heterosexuals marching around about how much they want to fuck each other, that's the other 364 days. Let us have our pride. God damn it. Sorry, it's really frustrating. It was like, why can't we have a straight pride parade? Because every day is straight pride. Literally, whole institutions are dedicated to straight pride.
Yeah, there's a difference when we're talking about celebrating things that are not a part of the majority, right? I mean, the majority is always celebrated.
The majority is a constant. It's a forever. It's a consistent. It's eternal. It's always the thing. It's the default. And then you must vary anything from that, which is, Yeah, that's the thing. So I think we've been going, what, 2 hours, an hour?
I don't know. Joe Rogan goes for 3. Should we push for 3?
Joe Rogan goes for 3. All right. Does he just burn through a lot of topics like I feel like we're about to do?
Yeah. Him and Elon Musk talked about a lot of stuff on there.
Okay, cool. I'm totally down to do that.
From LA traffic to space travel to neuroscience.
Oh, okay. Oh, wait, hold on. Wait. Okay, so Brutal Una says he disagrees with something. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure he'll tell me. Yeah, horribly. Sorry. Okay, so I lost my glasses today, so I am literally blind as a bat.
I feel like the thing that he disagreed with was whenever I said that heterosexual flags are negative.
Oh, were you talking about inherently, like they're literal negative, the thing that exists?
Well, no, like I saw it and I was like, wow, that looks like a negative symbol.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, it's funny, and part of the reason why, because it looked really negative to me too, but part of the reason why it looked really negative to me was because there are other symbols that exist in my social diaspora where black and white stripes aren't good, like jails and other black and white stripes.
Oh, hey, there's an asexual flag that's literally the heterosexual flag with a purple stripe on the bottom.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Oh, see, are you just looking up different pride flags now?
Oh yeah, here I'll copy and paste this other one to you. It's got a couple different ones.
I've seen these all, BT Dubs. Again, Vexillology.
Okay.
I still look at flags. like, flags and buses, man. Those are my things. Those are just what I'm really good
Flags
at.
and buses?
I can tell you the make, model, and year of almost any city bus I see. No bullshit.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can also tell you where most. I can look at a bus and tell you what city, county, or region it's from.
Huh.
Yeah, God damn it. My friend, you guys, if you were my friends when I was growing up, you're mean. No, I'm kidding, I love you guys. But I had a lot of time on my hands to Google shit.
All right, so what topic were we getting to?
Race. And whether or not someone can be transracial.
We've only been going for an hour.
Huh?
We've only been going for an hour.
Okay, one of the things we talked about yesterday was, can someone be transracial? And I said,
I'm gonna go with a hard no on that.
and I'm gonna go by the strictest definition of race, yes.
Okay. Are we talking about race as a social construct or as a biological category?
Race is a social construct, but that's because symbolic interactionalism physically can't see biology.
Right, okay. But would you agree that there are biological differences between people of different races?
Oh, absolutely, but they're few and far between, and they exist independent of race.
Okay, and that might be a fair point to make.
Yeah.
What is your knowledge of, I guess, medical malpractice between people of different races?
Race-based medicine, sir. It's
Yeah,
wildly interesting. It's actually pretty. So you actually argued a point that you found. Sorry, I'm smoking. That we found to be in direct contradiction, right? You had suggested that it's necessary for us to categorize things by race for medical purposes, and that it's useful for helping determine, determinants of health, right?
I'm saying that it might. I don't know enough about medicine
Okay.
or how independent variables are between people of different racial groups.
Definitely. So
I was saying from my experience, if black people on average have higher blood pressure, maybe that's something we should take into account.
absolutely. And I totally agree with you, but it will more so boil down as to what kind of care you're trying to give, right? Because using medically connected stereotyping does a lot to save both time and money. It's a lot better practical wise. However, if you're trying to deliver as close to objective quality healthcare as you can, it's actually wildly inefficient.
Right. Then if you're trying to get the best quality healthcare, you'd address everybody as an individual.
Bingo, right? And so with certain things, you want to do that, right? So for example, when I was in the Navy, fun story. We get to the swim pool thing, right? And we get there,
Yeah.
and so guy goes, okay, you 5, go to remedial swim. I was like, oh, okay. And so I go to remedial swim. I was like, wait, why are we here? And they were like, oh, well, the remedial swim is for people who didn't pass the swim. And I was like, well, we didn't even take the exam yet. How are we gonna pass it if we didn't even take it? And they were like, oh, well, you know, sometimes they sort of tell by body mass or whatever if someone's going to pass the swim test or not. I'm like, that's interesting because all of us over here are black. Range in body types, we are all black. That is our only common denominator. And so he sort of cracked the joke like, oh yeah, but you know, it's medically understood that black people have lower lung capacity and can't swim. And I was like, well, then you'd have to explain the fact that I have great lung capacity and I can swim. If that's intrinsically true.
Actually, the statistic that I heard was slightly higher bone density.
Right, which is true of some black people. But again, if you talk to black people in Denmark, they will have no idea what you're talking about.
Or talk to black people with degenerative bone disease. Pretty sure that's going to be lighter.
Right, exactly. And so if you're trying to get the best quality care, race is actually a really bad determinant for things because a lot of those are medically held stereotypes from things tested a very long time ago. And it's actually proven to be quite detrimental in a few cases. A few times I suggest you look up something called the Tuskegee syphilis trials. It's a wildly fucked up situation. But
yeah, no, I got it. And I'm kind of comparing it in my head because to me, medical understanding of like racial categories, hopefully I'm saying that right, would be similar to people attempting to look at people's personality based on their body type.
Sort of. Except
that's a real field of psychology.
Yes, no, definitely. But again, in some cases, you're talking just psychological versus actual physical, you know, surgeries or medical procedures or things.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's the difference between psychological and sociological applications.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely, absolutely, right. Yeah, you would use that sort of collective assumption to operate or diagnose certain things. Sociologists do it all the time.
Right.
As well.
I say if you came up to me and told me, hey, you know, fat people on average are more angry, I would look at you like you're ludicrous.
Right. Like why? Like yeah, show me the math behind that.
Right, and then I'm sure if somebody walks up to you and is like, hey, insert racial category here, insert variable here, and like they tell you that, you probably react the same way. Right,
exactly. One of the most egregious things I looked into lately is do you know what a barometer is?
Say that again?
A barometer.
I've heard of it. I can't think off the top of my head what it measures.
Gotcha. No, so it measures lung capacity, right? Well.
Okay, right, yeah. The thing you blow into?
Yes. Well, to this day, barometers still have a setting for it that's based on the construction of race. And whatever it calculates, the output will change depending upon race input you put into it, right?
That's weird.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I understand their reasoning.
Right.
I don't think it's factually correct.
No, it's not, and it's almost an impossible way to get a factually incorrect number if you start off at a margin of error. And so it's designed to measure lung capacity, and it always comes out that black people have smaller lung capacity than other people do. I wonder why. Kind of thing. It would be more beneficial to measure lung capacity individually.
Right. So, I mean, one good way to to see how radically different they are
Right.
is to test people of different races with the same setting.
Yeah. Which, but you would expect medical science would know that, that would be something automatically understood. The other thing, there's some social stigmas held around race when it comes to medicine. One of which being in sort of cooperation with public health officials, law enforcement, etc. You are statistically less likely to receive things like painkillers if you're a person of color, because it's medically understood that people of color tend to over-exaggerate their pain more, or the opposite, be more immune to it. Neither of those are demonstrably fact.
I heard the same thing about lower class people.
Yeah.
So like I was complaining about my back hurting or whatever.
Right.
And I was picking my brother up from daycare, and they're like, "Oh, but just don't ask for any painkillers." And I'm like, I don't know what you're insinuating, but okay.
Right, and also fuck you. Sorry.
No, like I'm still wearing like a gray tank top, black basketball shorts, and flip flops.
Right.
Like I'm not dressed very, very nice.
Yeah. Right.
Like, I don't know if you think I walked over from 9th Street or whatever, but you're kind of being an asshole.
Yeah. Also, fuck you.
Right.
Yeah. Before you get all beside yourself, remember we all live in Modesto, so we're none of us are really rolling in the dough. Let's be 100.
Jokes that we can make are about Stockton. So.
Right. Yeah. Clearly, you're not so high and mighty yourself, sir.
I just think it's funny. It's literally like Modesto makes fun of Stockton, Stockton makes fun of Compton, and then Compton just cries.
See, and what's funny is you're all terrible. You're all bad. It's just you're all equally awful in the eyes of places that are awesome. I'm kidding.
The only difference for me is like I can leave my truck unlocked and coin flip. It might still be there.
Right. See, and the difference between me is I live in Seattle and can't have a truck. Right.
Ouch.
Yeah. No, I can legally have a truck, but it's wildly inconvenient. I actually got rid of my car. Oh yeah, I got rid of my car when I moved to the city, but we just dumped a bunch of money into a light rail system, so I'm excited. $54 billion.
Nice.
Yep. That's enough for $1 billion for almost every person in California.
So we're moving on to had to do with biological race versus race as a social construct.
So I don't think there is such thing as a biological race.
Okay, that's fair. I'm saying that people can be grouped together categorically by the differences in their biology. Right?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, they are.
Right. The only thing I'm saying is like how you would try to determine to group those people together is ruined by intersectionality. So
how is it ruined by intersectionality?
What I'm saying is there's too many different ways that you could try to group people together. Like there's an infinite number of ways in which you can attempt to group people together. Then that gets limited down by differences in biological variance.
Oh yeah.
But then if you try to do that at the same time as taking race as a social construct into account, it obliterates your intent.
Yeah, but it also depends largely on the intent, right? If you're looking to determine, universal social patterns in a given group, you don't really need to dig further than that. You can sort of just take what you observe. If you're trying to measure something as individual's lung capacity, you need to dig deeper than sort of these assumed cultural norms based on skin tone.
Well, okay, and then here's another interesting thing is like, if you talk to somebody and you're like, oh, hey, what do you think are the biological differences between people of different races?
Mm-hmm.
I would counter with the argument of, what do you think the difference is psychologically?
Okay. What do you
do you think that that people of different races function psychologically different than others?
Yes.
Really?
Wait. Do I think differ? Do I think they function different psychologically?
Right. So I'm saying, do white people and black people think differently from one another?
Oh no.
Right. So that's my argument.
Yeah.
If someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, what are the differences between white people and black people biologically?" I'm going to be, I'll just ask, what's the difference psychologically?
Gotcha. I don't know. I never really talked about white people or black people in either of those contexts. Usually, I'm talking about it's a social construction. Well, that's not fair. I do that. I do that. I guess I don't know. Where I fall on race as a social construct is that it is a social construct. There are some things that appear to reflect on it, but unless everyone within that race group does it, it can't be intrinsic within that race group. It's usually something deeper, something off to the side that's the cause of sort of this trend you see in a particular race group.
Right. I was making the case that in order to attempt to look at biological differences, and use a filter of a social construct, it becomes pretty much impossible, if not impossible.
I mean, oh, sorry, God, I can talk. I don't think it does become impossible. So you're saying you can't have the conversation about the biological difference between races with the presupposition that race is a social construct.
No, I'm saying
if
race is a social construct, you can't look at people of different races and attempt to make biological claims.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I agree with that.
So that was my argument.
Okay.
I was providing all of my previous evidence for.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. I have no problem with that. I absolutely agree with that in its entirety. Yes, because, or I would phrase it differently. I would phrase it because race is a social construct. You can't look at it biologically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't determine biological differences through the lens of a social construct.
Yeah. So while it may be time saving and all to look at medicine through a race lens for some things, it doesn't. Basically, it's not true. You're not getting factual statistics and numbers. You're doing practice based.
I mean, I guess you could talk about the differences in melanin content, and that would get about as objectively as you could get.
Exactly. That would be the closest. But even then, when you're talking about melanin, you're usually talking about something like sunburning or skin cancer and things of that sort. Which we know that
because I'm super white, like I have to deal with sunburns and nobody else does.
Right, exactly. I am black and I have personally been sunburned and it sucked because I had no idea what was happening. I've never been sunburned before. Quick story, it's fun. I was in the Navy and we went to Dubai and I fell asleep at a water park for 4.5 hours with no sunscreen,
that's a good idea.
Not under an umbrella. And so when I woke up, I was like, oh my God, like my everything burns. Everything. What is happening to me? I'm dying, I'm on fire. And then my friend's like, Darren, are you okay? And I was like, no, man, like my body hurts. What's happening? I started crying really hard because I was also kind of drunk. I started crying really hard. And then I was like, what's happening? They're like, dude, you're sunburned really bad. I'm like, no, that's not a thing. Black people can't get sunburned. No, you're stupid. Shut up. And he was like, no, you're sunburned. And I was like, I'm not sunburned. And one of my friends touches me and oh my God, it was so painful. It hurts so bad.
Do you want to know a common thing socially between white people that get sunburned?
What's that?
They smack each other's sunburns.
Why? See, this is what I'm talking about. First of all, white people, I don't know why we're called colored. We are basically the same color from start to finish. It's you guys that change color like fucking chameleons. When you're cold, you're blue. When you're dead, you're like green. When you're fucking sunburned, you're red with a bunch of white handprints. Secondly, why do you hit each other in your pain? Like,
it's kind of like I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, why do you push somebody in a swimming pool?
because you're a dick.
I mean,
Because you're an asshole. Like, I don't know. Okay, fine. You're culturally an asshole then. Is that?
I don't know. I don't know how to say it, but it's like the idea of we're going to create a juxtaposition where I'm usually a really, really good person.
Yes.
But here's a small area in which I can give you a lot of pain. And we're going to see that juxtaposition as funny mutually.
Right. Although
for this 15 to 20-second window, you're going to be in a lot of pain and not see it as very fun.
Right. No, definitely. Trust me, I absolutely understand. I understand hazing. Again, I was in the Navy.
Yeah, I don't get it, but I mean, yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, no, yeah, and well, not intercultural communication. That's something different.
Well,
individual interactionalism is really interesting.
Bring up the fact it's all about trying to make the other person stronger, right?
I mean, sure. That's the intent.
I mean, I don't know. I would say that could be an unconscious, what do you call it? Unconscious motivator.
God damn it. See, toxic masculinity is terrible.
I would agree. Hey, yeah. I would agree. And that's coming from a guy who literally shaved his leg yesterday.
Right.
I was like, you know what? I'm tired of the idea that men have to have hairy bodies, this and that. I don't like it. It's on me. I'm removing it.
Right. And we don't have to, like, I was talking to somebody earlier and they were like, they were saying that toxic masculinity isn't a problem. There isn't a problem with masculinity. Well, I agree with you, it's not a problem with masculinity, but toxic masculinity is definitely a problem. And then he was like, oh, that's some, libtard shit, blah, 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 blah. I was like, but you cannot look at me in the face and tell me that there are not very strict rules to being a man, that if you do not follow, can have very violent consequences. Like,
we could start with the fact that growing up in my household, I was not allowed to show negative emotion in a lot of circumstances. And there was a huge implication on the fact that I must be heterosexual.
You have to be You can't be gay for some reason and still be a man. Those two don't match. They are like the American flag and the Confederate flag. One is literally not the other, according to some perception. I know there are strict rules.
You could just say the Canadian flag if you wanted to go with the whole non-man thing.
True, that's fair. That's fair. but it's so you can't look at me in the face and tell me that that's not the case, because I was a small, fat, black gay kid, so I can tell you there are rules to being a man. If you don't follow, you can die. I'm laughing because I'm stoned, but it's not a joke.
A lot of those rules are toxic, right?
Very much so.
I would argue if there's only 5 or 6 rules to being a man, at least 3 of them have to be toxic.
Why?
No, I'm saying that's what I would use to define currently.
Oh, yeah, the current state.
They have to be. I'm saying that they would be if we're analyzing.
Yeah, currently that's what it is. You're allowed to hold your girlfriend's hand and secretly listen to soft music, but the other 3 have to be terrible.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's several. I'm trying to think of the videos where it's like your stereotypical gangster, right? And he's listening to classical music, and then like his buddies are robbing a bank or whatever, and he's got to switch to some like hard rap before they get in the car.
Okay.
So it's the whole idea of people can differ until you put them into a social context, and then they have to conform to social social norm.
Right. So yeah, social convention.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Oh, fun AI question. Is there a need to put things like toxic masculinity in AI? Did I ask that question right? That sounded dumb.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it was posed very well, but
I can promise you it wasn't posed very well.
So, okay. So is there a need to put it in?
Or to include a model like that in the development of AI?
If you're talking about in a gradient, then yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was
In a
what I was
categorical
talking
system,
about.
probably not.
That's what I was talking about, a gradient.
So yeah, if you're looking at like, okay, toxic masculinity on one side and toxic femininity on another, and you're creating a gradient of the two, then yeah, that can actually be really, really good, especially if you did back propagation, which is a fancy term for saying learning algorithm.
Gotcha.
To determine the best way in which you could navigate a social situation, right? So if an AI is in a room full of 10 toxically masculine men, then maybe adjusting the responses that it gives to being more toxically masculine would have positive, more positive effects for the program to execute properly.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so it does have implications, but I would say that the actual application of the implication, I don't know.
See that? Toxic masculinity has no place in the future. No, I'm kidding.
I would say if you're talking about perceptual schema, that's where it would come into play most.
That's
right?
fair.
If I have the camera on my AI and it sees a person, it's going to assess visually where this person is on a hypermasculine to hyperfeminine gradient.
Right.
And androgynous people are going to fall in the middle and confuse it.
Okay. Right. Oh, you said something in there. Actually, I haven't heard in a very long time since my old Navy days. And it was toxic femininity. Did I say that?
Okay. It's a thing.
I don't know if it is.
Okay, if it's not a thing, it can be a thing.
Okay, fair. It can be a thing. Only because, and the only reason why I don't think toxic femininity is a thing, because if you ask someone what toxic femininity looks like, they're describing the traits that are normally assigned to toxic masculinity. There are things like loud, boisterous, violent, militant, things that are normally assigned to toxic masculinity. And so are those traits inherently feminine, or are they feminine versions of toxic masculinity?
I mean, if we're talking about cases where toxic femininity might be a thing,
yeah,
we should look at the negative actions that women do against other women, like defamation of character.
Fair. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's a point we're bringing up. That's actually really interesting. So you think so because toxic masculinity looks like something, right? It's the perversion of something that masculinity would normally do. It is.
I would say there's a visual characteristic to it.
Yes. So toxic femininity would be the perversion of something that's intrinsically feminine.
Correct.
Okay, that's interesting. I've actually never even considered that. I gotta look into that.
So if you,
I like to poll the audience on that one.
Maybe I'm beating a dead horse with this, but if you're seeing sociability as a feminine characteristic, right, then negative sociability would be toxically feminine.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay. So I think I would really have to sit down and look at inherently feminine traits and then try to determine their toxic versions.
Already pick out a few of them.
Huh?
I said I would say that we could already pick out a few of them.
What's a few of them?
Well, the whole thing with defamation of character being toxically feminine.
Yeah.
Positively feminine. I would just say all like baseline politeness and compassion is a feminine characteristic.
Yeah.
So if you are, and see, these are interesting because if you assess personality, right? There are differences in agreeableness between men and women at the mean,
Right.
but it's not by much.
Right.
However, that's also not how we judge. I guess subjectivity.
Yeah.
Would be a way to put it.
More or less, yeah. I'll
Because
take it.
again, as we talked about before, subjectivity is based on the collective, right?
Yes.
So if you're looking at agreeableness, and women as a collective are more agreeable than men, then agreeableness is going to be a feminine characteristic.
Yes.
Okay, good. We're on the same page. I like this.
Yeah. Right, because it really happens.
So, and then the same thing would be assertiveness, right?
Yeah.
Assertiveness is seen as a masculine characteristic.
Yes.
I would argue that extroversion could be, but I don't have any evidence for that.
Well, true. And I was actually going to say, well, what about positive assertion? But if assertion is inherently masculine in itself, whether it's negative or positive, it's still a masculine trait.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like I scored 85th percentile for assertiveness, and as you can tell, I'm not a very, I would say, toxic person.
No, right, right.
But I am hyper assertive, which I thought that was really hard to reconcile in my own mind because I always had a negative connotation with assertiveness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, assertive exists independent of the benevolence or malevolence behind it. Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
Right, and that's an important distinction, especially for the YouTube audience, because that's something that I had to come to terms with.
Right.
Okay, so we talked about extroversion a little bit. We talked about assertiveness. Enthusiasm, I would say, is a feminine characteristic.
That's fair. And so, what would the perversion of enthusiasm look like?
Say that again.
What would the perversion of enthusiasm look like?
You know, I'm probably not the best person to ask for that because if you put 100 people in a room, I'm the most enthusiastic.
Right.
So I don't know what negative enthusiasm looks like.
Same. Oh, speaking of counteraction, this is really funny. Somebody had just popped this up because I did a thing a long time ago about flamboyant masculinity, or flamboyant heterosexuality, which because when I was in high school, we were sitting in a group where we were talking about how okay they were with me, but that's because I wasn't flamboyantly homosexual. I wasn't flamboyantly gay.
And that's a lot of heterosexual people's perspective.
Yeah, and I was like, that's fair. I was like, but I feel like I have to sometimes deal with my friends who are flamboyantly heterosexual, and they're like, that's not a thing. I'm like, no, it absolutely is a thing. Like,
don't we call people metro?
Huh?
I said, don't we call people metro?
No. Metrosexuals are heterosexuals who adopt things that are normally considered to be part of homosexual culture, minus the sex part. No, these are people who don't. Wait, what did I call them? Crap, I forgot. What do I call them? They're not metrosexuals. They are. Wait, I lost my train of thought. Holy shit!
I might have to Google it. Let's see.
What did I start this with?
Flamboyant, heterosexual. I Googled it, mixing them up with metrosexual.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Flamboyant. No, flamboyant heterosexuals were the ones who were just as outright about their heterosexuality as the perceived gay people are about their homosexuality. So if you were to see a homosexual person in short rainbow shorts skipping around with angel wings, that person would be flamboyantly homosexual, right?
I see.
Yeah. Flamboyant heterosexuality, or because of otherization, just hypersexuality is flamboyant heterosexuality.
All right. Now I'm trying to assess where I could analyze that in my own life or in people that I know.
Have you ever seen a person? Have you ever talked to a person and he usually fits a certain archetype? He's kind of large, and he has to mention something about having sex with a woman every sentence or two, even though it wasn't prompted whatsoever. About
40 of them, they're all 20 years older than me.
Yes, those are examples of someone who would be flamboyantly heterosexual, waving it all in your face. like trying to
we call those people misogynists.
Yeah, oh, misogynist. Fair. Goddamn fair. Yeah, misogynist. Yeah, I was friends with a few of those flamboyant heterosexuals, the ones who God were just flaunting their heterosexualness all in my face, trying to shove it down the throat of my kids in America, trying to advocate that lifestyle.
Yeah, no, I thought that was really funny. I was like, who call those people misogynists?
Yeah, that was pretty good. That was a good land. That was a good writing.
Good intellectual jokes.
Good intellectual jokes. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to wrap this up because boyfriend's coming home soon, and
I still got philosophy homework to do because I got class tomorrow.
This should be a once a month thing, though.
Definitely, if not bi-weekly.
I'm down for bi-weekly. All right, Justin.
And I'm not trying to say that weeks have a bisexual preference.
You. All right, Papa.
All right.
Talk
hey,
to
have a nice day.
You too.
Sleep well.
Thanks, you too.
Night.
So I hope you guys like that. I hope to do more shows like that. Sorry if I didn't get to the rest of your comments. We sort of slipped into random conversation. You could tell I was dying a bit, but I like to do stuff like that. I like to talk about. I'm wildly to the left. I'm an ultra progressive. I'm an atheist. I'm an agnostic, atheist, anti-theist. Science first. I like to apply epistemology. I go live in public. I do clinic guarding and Planned Parenthood. I hope you guys liked it. I'm going to get to your comments later. And thanks for watching. Wait, how do I end this? I never went live. Oh, that's live. I went live before, JK. Let me